Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Null. Nice to have you with us today. What is one of the leading killers in the United States? It's stroke. And what's one way to have a stroke? Have high blood pressure. So anything that is helping us to resolve that high blood pressure, to stabilize it, including medications, can save our lives. How many people in the United States have diagnosed and treatable high blood pressure, or simply don't know they have it? That's why it's called the silent killer. We don't know that our blood pressure is raised until, boom, the stroke. It's upwards of around 60 to 80 million. There's no exact figures. That's an awful lot of people. So here's a question. Could something as simple, inexpensive, easy to get as black raspberry extract manage our blood pressure? According to a South Korean university study, the answer is yes. Supplementing with a dried powder extract of black raspberry can improve blood pressure and even help support cardiovascular health. And it was done in just 8 weeks of supplementing with a high dose of the extract were associated with significant reductions in 24-hour systolic blood pressure in pre-hypertensive people, and that's important. So, one more thing, along with garlic and onions. Remember, a raw onion a day, sweet onion, can help keep a stroke away. Now we can add one more thing to that. I'm sure many people in this audience, especially those who come from the Middle East, don't have to be told about tahini, T-A-H-I-N-I. Tahini comes from sesame seeds. You can get sesame seed oil, which, by the way, is great over popcorn instead of butter, or you can get tahini itself. And now there's a good reason to have tahini in your diet, because according to this study from Shahid University of Medical Sciences, tahini can promote heart health and significantly do it. Now, most people know when they're eating tahini, but if you had authentic hummus, H-U-M-M-U-S, you've eaten it nonetheless. Raw and unprocessed tahini without any additional oils or additives could be a superior food medicine for preventing heart disease and the risk of well, let's say stroke as well. A recent study from the Archives of Their Medicine reveals tahini as a possible substitution for risky drugs like statins, drugs prescribed for heart health and known to come with potentially dangerous side effects. Well, there are no dangerous side effects from tahini, and it really is good for your heart. And that's why at least twice a week, I take 1 tablespoon, a large tablespoon of tahini, fresh, organic, and raw, and I put it into my morning concoction, what my friends call Gary's mud bowl. And it's called a mud bowl because it kind of looks like mud, sometimes tastes like mud. The fact that everything I take is healthy doesn't mean that it tastes good. I mean, try taking some apple cider vinegar with lemon juice and some garlic and ginger, and it doesn't taste good, but it's really good for you. Lowers your blood pressure, helps you with blood sugar, helps with the bacteria and promotion of good bacteria in your gut, and also helps if you have parasites. All good. Well, I put a lot of stuff into this bowl. One of the things is a nut butter every single day, 7 days a week. It'll be tahini on one day, and then cashew, and then pecan, almond. Walnut is always important. It's one of the most important. And then sunflower and pumpkin seed butters. So every day I have a different nut butter. I don't use the same one more than once a week, but you're getting really heart health with that. So just remember, everyone benefits from having a scoop of organic nuts. Eat them, that's fine, but you're going to get more concentration of the healing power of the nut and the oils if you eat the nut butter. And the nut butter is simply, it's not butter, it doesn't come from cow. They simply take a simple machine. You can buy one for your own home. I have one. And therefore I can buy them wholesale. I'll buy a box of organic nuts. And I don't buy the whole nuts because you're going to pay twice as much. Instead, I buy, like, let's say, pieces of walnut, pieces of almond, pieces of cashews. And then you just pour it in. and push a little button, and just like you do in the stores, out comes this nice nut butter. Makes it easier to digest, especially for people who may have some inflammatory condition in their intestine. Also, we should start paying a lot more attention to the quality of our air that we breathe. And for men, especially men who are younger and who intend to have families, air pollution is found to reduce sperm mobility and motility. This is from Tonga University and Tong University School of Medicine. The team of researchers found that men are not having healthy sperm. And you need healthy sperm in order to have a healthy pregnancy and conception. And a woman has to be healthy also. So both people, and I always recommend this, I don't think anyone takes my advice on this, but it's still important. Always plan for at least 12 to 24 months before having a child to go through a pregnancy cleanse and detox program, where you'll use natural chelators to get rid of the heavy metals and toxins. You'll get rid of all the pollutants in the body. You'll rebalance your body's biochemistry. Even doing something as simple as just standing on the earth, just the soil, barefoot, for about 5 minutes a day can help within the next 24 hours to enhance the electrical charges through the natural soil. I won't go into all this now, but it's a whole science to itself. It's called grounding. That also helps. Also, it makes it less likely you're going to have a stroke. In any case, I'll do a whole program on it because it deserves it. There's a lot of science on this, though almost nobody knows about it. But just getting rid of the toxins and rebuilding, and when you're rebuilding the hormones, you're rebuilding all the systems, you're also rebuilding healthier sperm, especially in quality of the sperm and motility. This was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association's Network Open. So now they're looking at people who live in polluted areas. And the people in the study found that a person's sperm was directly impacted in its motility by how polluted the air was. So air pollution is definitely tied to this. And that's not. Well, we've all seen the energy drink ads, right? Want more energy? Take this drink. What we don't see is what's in the drink. And we should. Why? Because according to a study from Yale University, kids who consume energy drinks are 66% more likely to be hyperactive and inattentive. In effect, they're manifesting the symptoms of ADHD or ADD, even though they don't actually have it. They give you the same symptoms. And just as an aside, before I go into this study, I did a study. I've done 50 clinical studies. These are very serious studies. Some last a year and a half, coming every week. Some are on campus where people were there for 1-2 months, so their environment can be controlled. And the results have really been important for me and the people in the studies. It's helped them. We've had over a 90% success rate. And in this one study, I interviewed people for over 2 months. To get into the study, you had to have a child, more often than not, but not always. It was a young boy who had ADHD diagnosis and was under treatment, and generally under using drugs like Ritalin. In any case, I specifically remember this woman who was a physician and her husband a physician, and they had 3 boys, and they entered them into the study. And we did this study in the big room at the office I had for 27 years over at 83rd and Broadway. And on the very first day of the study, all the kids in there were just totally distracted by everything. And the parents were frustrated because it was the parents who had to get all the lessons learned. But we had our medical team, including neurologists, headed by Dr. Martin Feldman, who had to go through every interview with these people individually. So once that was all done, that's the pre-study, then I simply asked a simple question on the first day. It was the first night of the study. How many parents in here have examined how much sugar, artificial sweeteners, coloring agents, or preservatives are in their children's diet? Not a single hand went up. How many people find that their children are not universally hyperactive, meaning there are times of the day when they seem normal, and then they're hyperactive. All the hands went up. So then we asked the children, especially the teenagers, when do you become hyperactive? And when are you calm? And it was interesting because 3 of the attendees said that when they're in a class they're bored with, they begin to distract themselves. And when they're in a class they like, they're very attentive. And their grades showed it. When you do homework, or what about homework on a class you don't like? They didn't like doing the homework. On a class they did, yeah, they liked doing the homework. So then I asked the parents, and that's when I had the response from the mother, who was a medical doctor. She wasn't a pediatrician, but she was a medical doctor in internal medicine. And I said, what do you feed your kids before you go to school? Well, look, if you got 3 boys, I said, I know what it is to have 3 boys because I'm one of 3 boys in a family. So I'm familiar with having all boys in a family. She said, well, they don't like to get up because they stay up late at night. They're always on their gadgets. And so I got to get them up. And so they'll have coffee and sometimes a bagel, and then they're off to school, or an energy drink. Okay. Could you tell me all the ingredients in the energy drink? No. I'm assuming there's some caffeine in there. How much caffeine? Now, one of my doctoral theses was on caffeineism. I did 2 years of clinical research at the Institute of Applied Biology and with an outside observer to make sure everything was done correct, showing that normal people, just normal everyday people, given caffeine for a period of just 3 weeks, frequently become addictive and they become hyperactive. And then what it took to get them detoxified off that caffeine and sugar. And then I showed them that how much caffeine do you think you can put into your body before you become hyperactive? I don't know. Well, how about as little as 100 milligrams? Even less, depending on the size and sensitivity of the person's biochemistry. But how much are in these energy drinks? And some of the energy drinks were very high. And some espressos, even a double espresso, 500 to 700 milligrams caffeine. What is the lethal dose? When can a person have a heart attack or actually die? And it was up around that to 1,000 milligrams. And then I remember in a race, this was a long race. This was a 50K. The race only begins when you've finished a marathon. Then you got this whole other 10K to go. And almost all the athletes were using, and I won't mention the name of the product, using a product that's commonly sold. Athletes everywhere, bikers, everyone used because it gives them that endurance. No, it gives you massive amounts of caffeine. In fact, in this race, one of the guys who was a friend of mine had over 2,000 milligrams of caffeine in his body by the end of the race. He's lucky he didn't die. So I said, here's what we're going to do. Elimination diet number 1. No caffeine in any beverage, including green tea. You can get decaffeinated green tea, but not regular green tea or black tea or oolong tea because they all have caffeine. And then no sugar, no fructose, unless it comes from fruit, but no refined fructose, no sucrose, and no refined carbohydrate. What's that mean? Well, anything that's been refined from a complex carbohydrate, like a whole grain, into a refined carbohydrate, which is then pure sugar. It goes from a polysaccharide to a disaccharide or monosaccharide, but your body's going to use it like it's a sugar, and you're going to see these spikes in your glucose level. That's one of the primary causes of prediabetes and diabetes. So for the next week, until the next meeting, everyone was on this elimination diet. And when they came back the next week, the first thing that the first person said was the doctor says, I couldn't believe it. For the first time in memory, when I woke them up in the morning and we gave them the drink that you were telling us to give them that had the plant-based protein and the probiotics and the berries and the flaxseed oil, hemp seed oil, coconut oil, olive oil, all in the same drink. She said, my kids didn't bounce off the wall. They weren't hyperactive. So I said, you see, there's a confluence there where we're assuming that everyone who is hyperactive or distracted or fidgets has a brain chemical imbalance. It's not true in the vast majority. Within 3 months, 93% of the young, from I think the oldest was 21 down to 7, were all normal, no medicines. And they then had to have re-examination by their doctors, who also confirmed they no longer qualified for the diagnosis of ADHD or ADHD. Now, I've expanded on what this Yale University school, because I have my own personal experience as a person who has a PhD in nutrition and public health science, and is a senior research fellow for 33 years, doing over 50 clinical studies. And maybe Wikipedia might like to see how many other people with my background have done 50 clinical studies, including publishing peer-reviewed journals and invited all over the world, but never mentioned any of that. But for those who know me, they know that I do work differently because I look in a different place. And this is a natural, non-toxic place, your diet. So get rid of all that and see if it doesn't make a difference in you, in your hyperactivity, or in children if you have them. In the Yale study, it confirmed that middle school children who consume heavily sweetened energy drinks are 66% more likely to be at risk for hyperactivity and inattentive symptoms. That is the new study. Now, separately, and I won't go into it now because I don't have time, not only will getting rid of caffeine and sugar and refined carbohydrates help you with your mood and behavior, but also is going to help you with prediabetes, heart disease, and obesity. From the University of Sydney comes a study about glucosamine, that's glucosamine, plus chondroitin, chondroitin, can reduce the joint space narrowing. Now, this is a 2-year daily supplementation of a combination, and you can generally get them together, glucosamine and chondroitin sulfate. And this significantly reduces the joint space narrowing in the knee, and that can help you. This was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, long-term evaluation of glucosamine sulfate study. How much? 1,500 milligrams a day of glucosamine sulfate and 800 milligrams a day of chondroitin sulfate resulted in a statistically significant decrease in the joint space narrowing compared to placebo. That can help people with knee problems. That's the latest on health and healing. I'm Gary Null. We're going to take a break. When we come back, a lot more to share with you. Please stay with us.